The sun was dipping low over the edge of the savannah, painting the horizon in a fiery blaze of gold and crimson. The drums had already begun their slow, insistent thrum, reverberating through the dust-heavy air. The people gathered in a wide circle around the central clearing, their voices low and humming with anticipation. In the middle of that circle, a cage of wooden spears lashed together with sinew and rope held a lion. But this was no proud, prowling beast. The lion lay on its side, ribs heaving in shallow breaths. Its once glorious mane was ragged with blood, one leg bent at an unnatural angle, and its eyes, though still burning with a flicker of defiance, were dimmed by pain. It had been caught days earlier when it stumbled limping near the outskirts of the village, half-starved, a shadow of the kingly predator it once had been. For the people, the lion was an omen. An injured lion wandering so close was no accident, it was a sign of anger from the gods, of imbalance, of punishment waiting to descend. The elders decreed it must be sacrificed in fire to appease the spirits. In the crowd, pressed against the bodies of villagers who pushed forward to see, a thin girl no older than 12 watched with wide eyes. Her clothes were nothing but torn scraps of cloth sewn together, her hair tangled and streaked with dust. She was not truly of the village, she had been left there years ago, abandoned near the riverbank as a baby and taken in not with love, but with pity. The families had traded her from home to home like an unwanted burden, never fully accepting her as one of their own. Her name was Amara, though most people simply called her, the Stray. The drums grew louder, echoing with the chants of the men circling the fire pit being prepared at the center. The lion gave a ragged cough, its tongue lolling from its mouth, and Amara felt something twist in her chest. She had seen animals before, even predators, but she had never looked into the eyes of one so broken, so weary, yet still alive. The villagers jeered, mocking the lion's weakness, spitting near the cage. One of the men jabbed a spear through the gaps to test its strength. The lion barely flinched, though its eyes locked briefly on the child standing beyond the crowd. Amara could not look away. Something in that gaze reached into her, like a voice without words, pleading, commanding, remembering. Her heart pounded harder with every beat of the drum. She didn't know why, but she felt that if she looked away now, she would lose something precious forever. The chief of the village raised his staff, signaling for silence. He was an imposing man, his face carved with lines of years and painted in ochre and ash. The gods have shown us their anger, he proclaimed, his voice booming over the hush. This beast wandered into our lands, lame and forsaken, a shadow of its pride. Such weakness brings danger, for when the king of the wild falters, chaos rises. Tonight, we restore balance. Tonight, we give its life to the fire. The crowd cheered, stamping their feet. The drummers struck harder, rattling the air like thunder. Two young men stepped forward, gripping spears, ready to drag the lion toward the pyre. The beast attempted to rise, its muscles trembling, but it collapsed again, panting, defeated. The villagers laughed at its futility. But Amara's throat tightened with something that wasn't laughter. It was wrong, she could feel it in her bones. The lion wasn't a curse. It wasn't weakness. It was survival itself, battered and alone, just as she had always been. She remembered nights lying hungry under strange roofs, listening to whispers that she was cursed, unwanted. She remembered fighting against the feeling that maybe they were right. And now she looked at the lion, and she saw herself. Before she knew what she was doing, her feet carried her forward, pushing past the legs and shoulders of taller villagers. She slipped through the gap in the circle just as the young men reached for the cage. A murmur rippled through the crowd as they saw the stray girl standing there, her thin frame dwarfed by the men's spears and the shadow of the fire pit. "Move, child," one of the warriors barked. But Amara didn't move. Her voice shook, but she forced it out, loud enough to carry. "No," she said, "you can't kill it." The silence that followed was sharper than the drums had ever been. Faces turned toward her with disbelief, then anger. The chief's eyes narrowed. "What did you say, Stray?" Amara clenched her fists, though her knees trembled. "The lion is not a curse. It is hurt. It needs to live. If you kill it, you make the gods angrier." Gasps rippled through the villagers. A child, daring to contradict the elders. Madness. The men with spears scowled. One raised his weapon as if to push her aside, but the lion suddenly let out a sound, a deep, guttural growl, weak but rumbling, its gaze fixed on the girl. The men froze. The crowd fell back slightly, uncertain. Amara's heart thudded. The lion's eyes were locked on hers again. She stepped closer to the cage, ignoring the hissed warnings behind her. She crouched low, her small hand trembling as she reached toward the gap in the spears. The villagers muttered in horror, expecting the beast to lash out, to snap her arm in its bloody jaws. But the lion didn't move. Its breathing slowed, its golden eyes steady. And then, with surprising gentleness, it shifted its great head just enough that its muzzle touched her fingertips. A shiver ran down Amara's spine. It was like touching fire and stone, pain and strength, all at once. The chief's staff slammed against the ground. "Enough," he roared. "This is no miracle, only foolishness. The beast dies tonight, as the gods demand." "No," Amara cried, spinning to face the circle. Her voice cracked, but the words burst from her with a force she didn't know she had. "It came here because it is alone, like me. If the gods sent it, then maybe they are telling us to show mercy, not fear. If you burn it, you destroy the test they gave us. Don't you see? The lion is not our curse. The curse is in our cruelty." The crowd murmured, unsettled. No one had ever heard the stray speak like this. Some sneered, others whispered to one another. But the chief's face hardened like stone. He lifted his staff again, signaling the warriors forward. In that instant, something wild ignited inside Amara. She darted to the cage and pulled at the knots of sinew binding the spears together. The warriors lunged, shouting, but the lion, as if understanding her intent, surged with a last burst of strength. With a roar that silenced every voice, it slammed its body against the cage. The spears cracked and splintered. Amara's hands tore through the loosened bindings, and suddenly the cage fell apart. The lion staggered free, swaying, its injured leg dragging. The crowd scattered in panic, screams rising as dust and smoke filled the air. But the beast did not attack. It stood beside Amara, towering above her fragile body, and together they faced the chief. The chief's staff wavered in his grip. His eyes flicked between the child and the broken king of the savannah, standing side by side, refusing to fall. For the first time, uncertainty cracked his command. Amara placed a hand on the lion's mane. "If you must punish someone," she said, her voice steady now, "punish me. But let the lion live." The silence stretched long, broken only by the lion's labored breathing. And then, slowly, the beast turned. With agonizing effort, it began to limp away from the fire pit, away from the village, toward the open plains beyond. Amara stepped after it, ignoring the cries behind her, until the dark swallowed them both. The days that followed were a blur of fear and wonder. Amara stayed with the lion, tending its wounds with whatever she could find. Clean water from streams, leaves she had seen villagers use on cuts, strips of her own clothes tied around its leg. She spoke to it as though it understood, telling it stories of her life, of her loneliness, of how the village had never wanted her. And the lion, though it never spoke, listened. Its breathing steadied, its eyes sharpened, and though its limp never fully vanished, strength returned to its frame. At night, under the vast spread of stars, Amara would curl beside the lion's warmth, her fears dissolving in the rhythm of its heartbeat. For the first time in her life, she belonged somewhere, not with people, but with a creature who, like her, had been cast aside and yet refused to die. Word spread back in the village. Some said the stray had been devoured. Others whispered she had become a spirit herself, bound to the lion. The elders argued whether the gods had cursed or blessed them. But none dared pursue her. Seasons shifted. Amara grew taller, her limbs strong from wandering the plains, her skin darkened by the sun. The lion grew older, its mane streaked with silver, but it walked proudly again, scarred yet unbowed. Together, they became a legend. Hunters spoke of seeing them across the horizon, girl and lion, side by side, guardians of the wild. Some said they saved lost children, driving away hyenas. Others claimed they punished those who killed for greed. Fear and awe mingled in the tales. And through it all, Amara carried the memory of the night she had stepped forward, trembling and alone, and found courage in the eyes of a dying lion. She had not saved it alone, it had saved her too, teaching her that strength was not in fire or sacrifice, but in mercy, in survival, in choosing to stand against cruelty even when your voice was small. Years later, when the lion finally lay down beneath a white acacia tree and did not rise again, Amara wept as she had never wept before. She buried her hands in its mane, whispering thanks. Then she rose, carrying the spirit of the king within her, no longer astray, no longer abandoned. She walked the plains with the strength of a lioness, and the world remembered her as the girl who once saved a broken king from the fire, and in doing so, saved herself.